Hey guys, my name is Dice Rollin. Today we're going to be taking a look at a movie that I just recently discovered. It's considered to be a rather obscure cult film, but still has a very loyal and enthusiastic fan base. It was released 1 year before Rocky Horror Picture Show, and would often be played back to back with it. Even the summary of the movie is phrased in such a way that it makes you feel like you know what's going to happen, but then it turns it on its head right in front of you. So, without further ado, this is the story of a sound. The man who made it, the girl who sang it, and the monster who stole it. This is Phantom of the Paradise. The movie starts off with Rod Serling giving some backstory on the most successful person in the music industry, Swan. While a very mysterious and secretive person, Swan made a lucrative record company called Death Records. You'll notice throughout the film that it's quite obvious Death Records' title was superimposed over something. Swan's searching for a new talent to open his rock palace, the Paradise, with. During the opening credits, we're introduced to Swan's star band, the Juicy Fruits, played by Archie Hahn, Jeffrey Commoner, and Peter Elbling, as they sing Goodbye Eddie Goodbye in a sort of Grease-style performance. The song tells the story of a singer who needed to become famous in order to be able to pay for a life-saving operation for his sister. The meaning of this song could be translated to a willingness to sacrifice everything in order to save someone you love. This becomes a rather important tell later. We're also shown a rather nerdy-looking man by the name of Winslow Leach, who is played by the late William Finley. After this performance, we're introduced to Swan's right-hand man, Philbin, played by George Mimoli, who unfortunately passed away as well. He's telling Swan about his star singer who went rogue, essentially, and attempted to sue her, but lost, so he wants Swan to destroy her. This really says a lot about his character and morals. Or lack thereof. But Swan isn't concerned with Philbin's problems, as he's more interested in Winslow's song. The song in question is titled Faust, because it's literally about the German magician who made a deal with the devil. It's also about undying love. Swan believes it would be the perfect thing to open the paradise with, but not if Winslow's the one singing it. When Winslow is singing Faust, it is quite literally William Finley who is singing it. Granted, it's dubbed over later. Quite a few people have mentioned that it doesn't sound as good as it could have. Exactly! Winslow isn't a singer, he's a composer, and the unpolished vocals of William Finley fit perfectly with this. No dissing William Finley's singing, of course. Quite the opposite. I found this version of the song to be quite pleasant and not hard to listen to. All in all, it adds to the character of Winslow. So Philbin meets with Winslow and tells him that Swan likes his song so much that the Juicy Fruits might just play it.
First one. I'm not gonna let my music be mutilated by those grease balls. I'm the only one who can sing Faust.
Or not. In case you couldn't tell, Winslow doesn't exactly like the idea of Swan's star band getting their hands on his song. Winslow gives Philbin what he's written thus far, and he's promised that Swan will talk to him soon. Yeah, so that was a lie. Our clueless protagonist visits Death Records' building to find out why Swan hasn't gotten back to him about his song. He quickly finds out that Swan has no intention of dealing with him at all. When he's chased out of the building by two... well, I guess they call them bikers. But since Winslow doesn't take no for an answer when it comes to his life's work, he follows Swan's car back to the mansion called the Swanage. While making his way across the lawn, we get to hear a not-so-subtle snippet of a song about meeting the devil. I'm gonna assume no explanation is necessary here. Upon entering the giant building, Winslow is greeted with... the most wretched sound I've ever heard in my life! This is a line of women with varying range practicing to audition for Swan, but one singer in particular catches Winslow's eye, ear. This is Phoenix, played by Jessica Harper. This is actually her very first role in a movie before she went on to star in Suspiria and Shock Treatment. Winslow asks her to sing the music for him, and he gives her some pointers on how it's supposed to be sung. She questions him on how he knows that's the way it's supposed to be sung, and he explains that he's the one who wrote it. This isn't quite believable to another woman waiting to audition, and points out that if he actually wrote it, he should be with Swan choosing the girls who get to sing it. Winslow finds out that his name isn't even credited on the music sheets. And still he has no idea why he is not being included on this process. But regardless, he's ecstatic to hear that Swan is chosen for his Faust to be played at the opening of the Paradise. Winslow promises Phoenix that once he gets a chance to talk with Swan, he'll insist on her being the one to sing his song as she has the perfect voice for it. However, Phoenix finds out that the audition process doesn't exactly involve singing, and she storms out of the Swanage. And once again, Winslow is thrown out by Swan's biker bodyguards. Yet this still doesn't deter him from trying to talk with Swan as he disguises himself as one of the women waiting for Swan to appear in his bedroom. Now, I have a lot of concerns about this scene. 1. How did Winslow get through the audition process? Do I even want to know? 2. How feminine does Winslow look in a muumuu to pull this off? Or how stupid are all these women to not notice and go, There's a guy here! And finally, who the hell has a circular waterbed? I mean, I know it's the 70s, but really? Swan finally makes his grand appearance with literal smoke and mirrors, much to the utter and creepy delight of the women gathered there. He has Winslow thrown out one more time and just for good measure gets him beaten up. And in case that wasn't enough, he also gets a pair of police officers to plant drugs in his purse. Proving that the justice system here, wherever here is much swifter than anywhere else. Winslow gets sentenced to life in prison for this, and he's sent to Sing Sing, where Winslow is informed that teeth are a source of infection, so he's going to have all of his removed and replaced with chrome. Fast forward 6 months later, and we see that included in a life sentence is the joy of being part of an assembly line for board games. On top of that, Winslow's had to deal with listening to the Juicy Fruit slaughter his Faust over the radio, and he's had just about fucking enough of it, as he pummels one of the officers before making a grand, if not Looney Tunes-esque, escape. Now that he's out, he heads straight for Death Records to exact some revenge by being a mild, if not rather terrifying and chaotic nuisance. But he's not satisfied with just that. Winslow goes to the building that prints vinyls of his stolen music with the intent to blow it the hell up. A reasonable response, really. Winslow isn't exactly able to exact his ultimate revenge, though, when he's surprised by a guard and slips, getting his head stuck in the press, which horrendously burns his face. There was a scene which we get to see the mutilation itself, and even Winslow getting shot by the guard, but it was deemed too much for a PG rating and cut from the film. With injuries that would have likely halted any normal person, Winslow makes his way through the parking lot and not so much dives head first as much as belly crawls into the nearby river. We're shown the front page of the Variety newspaper, which explains that Swan's Paradise will be opening soon. It also shows a little article on Winslow that describes pretty much everything we just saw, and how his body wasn't found. That's because Winslow's very much alive, though sounding a bit like Darth Vader as he sneaks into the Paradise after scaring the bodyguards, because he's just so horrifying. He makes it into the dressing room and finds the perfect outfit and mask to create his new identity as the Phantom. Next, we get to see the Juicy Fruits, now remodeled as Beach Boys knockoffs, named the Beach Bums, as they rehearse Upholstery, which is obviously a messed with Faust. At the same time, Winslow plants that dynamite in the trunk of the car prop they're using. All of this was done in a continuous take with split screen. You'll also notice that the ticking of the bomb is in sync with the music being played. Well, Winslow succeeds in blowing the fake car up, which causes chaos among everyone involved. However, Swan is suspicious about what caused this, as you notice a mysterious figure just a moment before the explosion. So Swan reviews the footage of the rehearsal. It's awfully convenient that absolutely everything in the Paradise is recorded, but that does have the effect that I'm sure was intentional, of Swan being everywhere and seeing everything. Swan finds that there is indeed someone haunting the Paradise who caused the explosion, and he even gets to meet him, again, when he exits his secret room as Winslow promptly threatens him with a knife. But when faced with his face, Winslow recoils in terror, giving Swan a chance to taunt him. Swan tells Winslow that he could give him the ability to create music again, and have his music performed by someone Winslow chose. But Winslow needs to work with him instead of trying to blow everything up. Winslow runs off, but returns the next day to help choose auditioning singers. Phoenix is there and actually gets to sing. This is where the song Special to Me comes in. And yes, that actually is Jessica Harper singing. Winslow and Swan agree that Phoenix is great, so they go to a fancy recording studio in the Paradise to talk. As you'd expect, it's a little difficult to talk to someone who can't speak, and presumably doesn't know sign language. Swan finds a solution for that by giving Winslow a literal voice box, which he tunes while Winslow sings Faust again. Something that usually isn't caught during the first viewing or so of this film is that the singing voice that Swan gives Winslow is in fact his own, which is why he finds it to be perfect. While Winslow's singing voice is perfect, his speaking voice isn't quite there, but close enough. Swan tells him that he wants Winslow to rewrite his cantata for Phoenix, that way it's a win-win. Winslow's Faust gets sung by Phoenix, and Swan gets to open Paradise with it. Winslow wisely doesn't believe a damn thing Swan tells him, so Swan whips out a contract the size of the terms and conditions page in the Apple Store. Continuing the theme of being rather clueless, Winslow doesn't understand the meaning of some of these clauses, but he signs it anyway, in blood, of course. Then we're shown Swan replaying what just happened, but it appears that Swan isn't quite what he seems. No shit moment, really. Meanwhile, Winslow works night and day on Faust, writing it specifically for Phoenix. And speaking of continuity for character, Swan searches for a different singer to perform Faust. He does this because, as he tells Philbin, he hates perfection in anyone but himself. And Phoenix is just too perfect. So Swan picks from a handful of different singers, ranging from Creedence Clearwater Revival to the Supremes before deciding on the ever-glittery Beef. Swan presents his new star to the press and returns to the Paradise to drug Winslow up, so he won't notice that he's being trapped, Edgar Allan Poe style. By the time he does, it's the opening night of the Paradise and Swan has stolen the last part of his song, and Winslow's not exactly happy about it. This freaks Beef out and he takes a shower as well as some cocaine to chill out. This gives Winslow time to pull a Kool-Aid guy move by smashing through Swan's trap, and a chance to play Norman Bates and give us one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
Well, you had better start the home while there's still time.
Never sing my music again. Not here, not anywhere. Do you understand? Never again. My music is for Phoenix. Only she can sing it. Anyone else that tries, dies.
Like a smart man, Beef attempts to run for the hills, but Philbin makes him go on with his performance. Here we get to see two songs. Almost. First is Somebody Special Like You, performed by the former Juicy Fruits, rebranded as The Undead. This song is all about how they need to create the perfect man from parts from the audience. Then Beef gets to sing Life at Last, much to the distaste of Winslow. Winslow solves this problem by literally hitting Beef with a lightning bolt, which electrocutes him to a smoldering pile on the stage. And the crowd loves it. Jesus, I thought the 70s were supposed to be about peace and love. Hey, good news is, this gives Phoenix a chance to sing the song Winslow wrote the right way. This is the song Old Souls, which is about a love between two people that never dies while they are reincarnated to find each other again. So with Beef dead and Phoenix becoming his new star, Swan says, "Hey, why don't you come back to my place?" To which Phoenix says, "Sure, why not?" Before Phoenix can leave the Paradise, however, Winslow takes her up to the roof to warn her about the danger she's in by working with Swan. He also tells her that he's Winslow, but she doesn't seem to believe him and takes off. Then Swan and Phoenix go back to the Swanage where Winslow finds them making out. This, understandably, upsets Winslow to the point of him stabbing himself. Swan sees this and goes up to the roof to remind Winslow of what he's literally signing up for with the contract. He can't die while Swan is alive. And it turns out that Swan has his own contract. After this, we're shown a piece from the Rolling Stone that tells us that Swan and Phoenix are going to get married live during the second part of Faust. Winslow finds Swan's hidden room and all the contracts he's collected over the years, including his own. Playing the tape reveals that Swan had been planning to kill himself when he was younger, and literally made a deal with the devil in order to become immortal and never age. Winslow also learns that along with the contract he himself signed, Swan got Phoenix to sign one too. Worse than that, Swan plans to have Phoenix assassinated on TV, because the fucking ratings! So Winslow sets fire to the archives and rushes to stop the gunman while Swan and Phoenix go on with their staged marriage. Winslow manages to make the assassin misfire and hit Philbin instead of Phoenix. Then he swings down to the stage, taking Swan's mask off to metaphorically and literally reveal who he really is. Also, the whole setting fire to the tape makes Swan vulnerable to mortal danger. So while Swan chokes out Phoenix, Winslow stabs Swan with a dancer's headdress. Repeatedly. This does the trick and the raving crowd surfs Swan's body around. But the downside of killing Swan is that Winslow's self-inflicted wound opens. In his dying moments, he crawls to Phoenix, who finally recognizes him just as he dies. And the crowd doesn't seem to give two fucks about that. With that, the credits roll with one more song from Paul Williams called The Hell of It. Interestingly, this song was meant to be played for a scene that never existed, which was Beef's funeral. So, I'm gonna be 100% with you. There are very few movies that I completely love with every fiber of my being, and this is one, and I will defend it to my grave. The soundtrack, a majority of which was created by Paul Williams, is fantastic. I love when songs not only go along with the story and the characters, but their emotions. When a song can tell a deeper part of the story even when the characters don't know it themselves. And having some of the characters actually create and perform these songs adds a special element to it. I hardly ever enjoy a complete soundtrack. There's usually one or two pieces that I tend to skip, or don't include when I'm adding songs from a movie to my playlist. I didn't do that with Phantom of the Paradise. I listened to each one of these songs on repeat sometimes. Even William Finley's version of Faust, which again, some people find less than pleasant sometimes. Even though the songs are different subgenres of rock, they flow together nicely to tell the story on their own. The aesthetic or look of a film is another thing I can be kind of picky about. In true 70s fashion, everything in the film is rich and saturated with vibrant colors. Even when the character is surrounded by darkness, it makes the little bit of color that's there pop that much more. You may also notice a bird theme here. Nick Spheres actually explained this very well in their review. Basically, the metaphor of birds is used to portray the main characters. Each of them has something to do with a bird. Swan, Phoenix, and of course Winslow with his bird-like helmet. Swan's label, Death Records, has the image of a dead bird on it. In a way, it tells you what's going to happen without you even knowing about it. All the actors did a fantastic job of bringing their individual characters to life. Winslow is pretty much the ideal type of character that I tend to consider a favorite. William Finley brought his extremely expressive acting abilities to the character, and even with a mask that would usually hinder an actor's performance, he was able to show every bit of emotion that someone not wearing it could, maybe even a little more. He starts off as a dorky and awkward introvert, and makes the grand arc to become a borderline psychotic and mutilated entity bent on revenge. But at the same time, he just wants Phoenix to be able to live out her dream. Throughout all of this, Mr. Finley is able to make you feel sorry for the character and want him to succeed, even if it means some characters die by his hand. Paul Williams was able to pull off a sinister kind of character without being a stereotypical over-the-top bad guy who's so obviously evil that you facepalm every time a character falls for his trap. There were moments where he just became the scum of the earth for what he did. A good example of this is when he's giving Winslow his voice again, but instead of it being his voice, it's Swan's own. So not only does he end up stealing Winslow's beloved song, getting him beat up, thrown in prison for life, inadvertently destroying his face and voice, but he doesn't even give him his own voice to sing with. And of course, Mr. Williams created some wonderful music throughout the film. They had tremendous meaning behind each song. I don't even like 50s or Beach Boys style music, and I like Goodbye Eddie Goodbye as well as Upholstery. In a majority of the romantic scenarios that I've seen, I tend to not care very much about the love interest involved. However, in the case of Jessica Harper's portrayal of Phoenix, I absolutely cared what happened to her. She wasn't there just to serve the purpose of being the love interest. She had goals and dreams and a spunky attitude. She didn't play the hapless victim that needed rescuing. She wasn't aware of Swan's intentions, though, but neither was Winslow at first. Gerrit Graham brought a very funny and goofy charm to Beef. In a way, Beef was really the victim here. He wasn't an antagonist or a hero, just a pawn in Swan's plan. But for the short time he appeared, you enjoyed every minute of his over-the-top personality. I heard from interviews that during the performance of Life at Last, he was actually really sick, but I highly doubt anyone would have been able to tell just from watching the scene. He most certainly put his all into the character. Even the supporting characters like Philbin and the Juicy Fruits had their own distinct personalities, and the actors who played them did an excellent job with each of them. I really can't complain about the acting or the characters because they complement each other so well. While Beef and Winslow may be rather dramatic, Phoenix and Swan bring a grounding, realistic sort of feel to the story. On the subject of story, this definitely isn't something to be looked at for how realistic it is. It's in a world all its own, and that's something quite difficult to pull off, and have the audience go along with it without question. But Brian De Palma did it, and he did it well. I read a short review of this movie by Austin Trunick that I think sums it up quite well. While Phantom of the Paradise is a mess, it's an extremely interesting mess. This is one of the very few movies that I know of that has a 90% plus rating on Rotten Tomatoes. That just shows how many people find it to be so entertaining. It's an extremely unique kind of movie. Is it horror, or a romance, or a musical, or a comedy, or something else entirely? And honestly, the answer to all of those questions is yes. It's all of that and more. You see or learn something new every time you watch it. So in that way, you can watch it again and again and again, and still have it be just as amazing as the first time you watched it. I may even go so far as to say that Phantom of the Paradise is better than the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Put your stilettos down! I suppose it would be better to say that if I was given the choice between Phantom and Rocky Horror, I would pick Phantom in a heartbeat. With that being said, keep in mind that I'm giving this movie a review in my own biased opinion. I would very easily give Phantom of the Paradise 10 bloody thumbs up, and it's the very first time I've given a movie a 10 out of 10 rating. But in case you couldn't tell by the length of this video, I really like it. It has such a unique mix of several different genres, and they all meld together so well. This movie is part of my collection and one of my absolute favorites. I've made it my mission, so to speak, to introduce it to even more people so that it gets the recognition it deserves. And you can bet your ass I'll be cosplaying the Phantom in the future. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up to let me know. And don't forget to leave a comment down below telling me what you thought of Phantom of the Paradise, and any suggestions you have for movies you'd like to see me review in the future. Also, don't forget to share this video to help the channel and the Phantom community grow. And subscribe for more videos like this. See you later.